All right, we are live. What is up, swimmers and swammers? Welcome back to the SwimSwam Breakdown. As always, I'm your host, Coleman Hodges, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York, joined by my fellow New Yorker, Sophie Kaufman, as well as the dirty double himself, Brendan Burns, coming from outside Philadelphia. We are here on the back of the 2025 Men's NCAA Championships, and that is primarily what we are here to talk about. Brendan, I saw you in Federal Way. You were there cheering on your Hoosiers. So I'll just throw this one to you. It was a really exciting meet. Lots of records broken. It was a pretty good team race. Not as close as I think many would have liked, but it came down to the last relay, technically. So, Brendan, first off, just what were your highlights personally from a fan perspective? From a Hoosier perspective, any favorite swims that you saw during your 3 days in Federal Way?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, the biggest story, I don't think this is a surprise. I've kind of gone on a social media campaign about it, was Jason Yep's 200 breaststroke. I don't think that's, you know, too surprising to anyone. I mean, what an incredible story. That guy, I'm going to tell if I one day end up having kids, I'm going to tell my kids about Jason Yep winning the 200 breaststroke and how much that means to him, how much that means to this team. Just a guy that, he's in that category of person on the team where he was just the absolute backbone of our team. He's been a leader since day one, just a great head on his shoulders. I mean, tears were flowing in the Indiana Hoosiers section when he won that 200 breaststroke. So just an emotional win for him. We're so proud of him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got to do the interview with him after, but the story has been told. But again, Jason Yep was a walk-on to Indiana, 157 yards in the 200 breaststroke coming in as a freshman. Last 2 nights ago, he went 148.3 in the 200 breast to win the NCAA title, number 3 performer all time. Really, really cool story. I saw Cody Miller on deck afterwards. And he was like, I was sobbing after that, like I took him under my wing. He told me one reason he came to Indiana was because he liked my videos. And it's like, man. And then, for Cody, a breaststroke legend at IU in his own right, to mentor and foster and help that story along. Yeah. How cool. The Hoosiers had 3 NCAA champions on Saturday night, which was also pretty cool. One of my favorite races was that 1650 where from lane 8, Zalan Sarkany just went out, led from wire to wire. And he had, I think it's Fenice. Maybe it's Arena. I'm sorry.
Arena.
It's an Arena suit, but it's like white. And I think I came in like at the 500 and I was like, why is that guy in a brief? Because like the part where a brief would go is like blue, but then the rest is like white. So it looked like he didn't even have a tech suit on. But in his post-race interview, he was like, yeah, I think that kind of camouflaged me. And like, because I was out so far, plus the white suit, people were like, I couldn't even see you. So I thought that was a pretty cool way to win an NCAA title too, in what was essentially camouflage. Sophie, any highlight swims for you during this weekend of madness?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think without a doubt, the 200 breaststroke was the most surprising swim of the meet. I was responsible for posting the final pick'ems results, and I can tell you that of over 622 entries, literally nobody had him winning. So I think that just kind of confirms how much of a surprise it was, and it was really great to see. Just for the sake of parity, I'll say that the men's 100 freestyle was one of the best races for me to watch. The 100 freestyle record falling in prelims was surprising to me. Maybe it shouldn't have been, given that we've seen Crooks often be at its best in a swim before the finals, and he certainly had cleaner water than he did in the final. But watching on the stream, that was still a big surprise to see at 1:40 in the afternoon on Saturday. And then it kind of bled into one of the, following the Crooks and Liendo storyline has been one of the most exciting things in college swimming for years now. And to just that kind of, to see Crooks get the record and then Liendo get the title in finals and get under that 40-second barrier. We saw them tie at SECs. And this has just been another poetic entry into their college rivalry, which has now come to an end. But it was really great to see it end on such like a exciting storyline.
Do you know what their all-time record against each other is?
Ooh, not off the top of my
I
head.
know what it is. What do you think it is?
Oh,
I think Liendo, SEC and NCAA, or
SEC, we're just counting major championship meets, SEC, NCAA.
Brendan with the stats. This is awesome.
I saw this on Twitter. I forget who.
I'm gonna guess Liendo is like up two races. Sophie, what do you think?
are they? Don't tell me they're tied.
What if I told you it was 8-8-1?
They are tied.
I mean, I'm pretty certain someone fact checked me, but someone spelled out all of their races at major championship meets, and I'm pretty certain it's 8-8-1 all time.
We got to find that tweet. That's awesome. So as you said, Sophie, what a rivalry and what a final entry into a very storied 3-year rivalry. I mean, it's so great that they are in the same conference, so we've gotten to see them go up against each other on so many different occasions, not just at NCAAs. But yeah, for Crooks to break that, I didn't have it on my bingo card for a Dressel record to go down and it not be the best swim of the meet, right? But like, I really don't think it was. Like 39.8 is obviously sensational, but like it was in prelims, and then it was only by a little bit, and I think everyone kind of thought that 100 free was the most vulnerable anyway. And so what a swim by Crooks, but also then for it to come down to finals and then Liendo just to get the touch. Yeah. Great narrative.
I mean, to break 40 and still not have your school record.
Seriously, Josh has got to keep trying. Josh still doesn't have a school record individually. Maybe the 200 fly. Maybe he has that one, but he still has not broken any of Caeleb Dressel's school records, which is, yeah.
I found the tweet, and it's not just major championship meets, it's all time NCAA swims. They're 8-8-1. So butt stroke swimming, the very credible source on Twitter. Thank you for doing the research.
I met Buttstroke at Olympic trials. Great guy. But that's, no kidding. Thank you for that tweet and that nugget of knowledge. Man, yeah, we're going to miss that rivalry for sure. I think the swim of the meet for me, not necessarily the surprise, but just the best swim, Hubie Koch's 2 back, 134.2, just decimated Destin Lasco's year-old record. I mean, Ryan Murphy's backstroke records stood for quite a while. He broke them in 2016, and I think Luca broke the 100 in 2022, and then Destin finally broke the 200 last year in 2024. But like those records were pretty legendary, and to have someone just make them look childish, his 43.2 was very impressive. I didn't think he had the sprint speed in him to do that, but then you kind of knew something crazy was coming in the 200, but didn't expect someone to almost go 133 in the 200 back. So that swim really stood out to me as like a holy crap moment.
Yeah. And to have 2 people under the 100 back record, and they were both like a half second away from that record, and then they both just torched it.
Seriously.
You can tell a lot about someone from their body language. I knew something crazy was going to happen when Hubie went 136.0 in prelims and immediately got out of the pool and just went to the warm down pool. He was nose breathing. It was almost like I kind of reminded me of his country mate Christoph Mielak before he broke the 200 fly world record for the first time. I think he went something crazy, 151 high, 152, and he got out nose breathing, and it was just like, yeah, that's going to go down.
That I feel like Mielak in particular is like the master of just not really showing emotion, just deadpan. And so I can't exactly picture the exact time you're talking about, Brendan, but I can totally see it in my head just because maybe that's a Hungarian thing. But yeah, Hubie Koch, also not on my bingo card, 43-2, not winning the 100 back, right? Someone going that fast and not winning. And I also really enjoyed about that race that it just kind of held up the tradition of I did not know who was going to win that race in the 100 back, right? Like there are so many qualified swimmers in that heat, in that final. Really appreciated that was another barn burner from start to finish. All right. Those are a lot of the highlight swims from their individual.
We missed a big one.
Go ahead.
A big one. 200 fly, Luca.
Dude. Tell us about it, Brendan.
Well, I somehow beat that guy one time for a 200 fly title a couple years ago, and I'm just so happy that everything he's been through, he was able not just to win his first individual NCAA title, but crush the all-time record that he previously held. But breaking new ground, 136. I think everyone's just so happy for that guy, and honestly, I'm really happy that he's going to use his 2 years of eligibility left. He's been through so much. He's going to be, that 26-year-old senior, but he really deserves it with everything he's been through.
I really appreciated in the comments that it seemed like a general consensus that when Yin Yin put out that article, when she broke that news, that he does have 2 years of eligibility left. And when you think about it, it makes sense. He had a medical redshirt year and he had an Olympic redshirt year. And then he has a COVID 5th year. But everyone was like, no, yeah, for him, it's fine. Like I'm okay with this. And I think, as you said, Brendan, that's because everyone kind of understands and has followed what he's been through, all the injuries he's had to deal with. And then finally getting back on top of that mountain. Yeah, super, super cool to see that for him. I wasn't even thinking about NCAA eligibility. That shows you the level of journalism I'm at the end of NCAAs, but Yin Yin was standing right beside me during our interview with Luca. She goes, are you coming back next year? And he's like, I've got 2 years left and I plan on using both of them. And it was like, what? It was so surprising. But again, once you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense. And yeah, happy for Luca. Happy we're going to get to see him in the NCAA for another couple of years as well. Any other highlight swims before we move topics to another NCAA thing?
I was a savant. You saw it.
You
5:59 8 free relay. I called that shot, I think, in November. And I reiterated it about a month ago.
Play back the tape.
I'll find the tape. We'll play it back. But holy moly, I did not think we would see that maybe in my lifetime. Sub 6 minutes. What do you make of that, Brendan?
Jaw on the floor. In the moment, I did not see the replayed Henvo start that got some controversy behind it. I think, I feel bad for him. You're in a big moment and something as trivial as a block slip. I don't think he pushed off the bottom of the pool after a couple different replay angles. It looked like he really just tried to get back up to the surface. But good on Cal. I mean, that was just such an electric relay for both teams. Reminded me of another great battle 10 years ago, the 2015 NCAA championships. I believe it was USC out on top, and I forget who they're battling with, but there have just been some all-time battles in that relay, and this is very close to being one of the best.
Absolutely. That relay in particular, yeah, we forgot about the controversies of this meet, or just like the mishaps, I guess. I don't. It's hard for me to say that Lucas Henvo definitively did not touch the bottom of the pool on his start, because you can see it from a couple different angles. It's been widely documented. Like you've seen a lot of different angles. To me, it looked like he at least like grazed the bottom, but it's neither here nor there. I'm glad that they didn't get DQ'd, because we would have been robbed of the first sub 6 minute relay. And had the mishap not happened, he certainly would have gone faster. I think. I don't think it made him faster than he would have gone. So I think the correct outcome happened. And yeah, what a race to have a team average 129 is still, I don't really know how to process that. We also saw in the heat 4 of the 200 fly prelims, a little starting error that caused a little skerfuffle, which I don't know if that was controversial, but it certainly is not something we're used to seeing at a high level swim meet like that. Sophie, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on either of these topics, and how they were handled.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sub 6-minute 800 freestyle relay, even though it was not without controversy, like was the thing we needed to like wash the taste out of the 200 medley relay DQ out of everybody's mouth. Like I'm not sure swim fans or the SwimSwam server could have handled 2 DQs from the winning relay on the opening night. Like that just would have been too much for everybody. You know, it was a really special swim, and then you know, to kind of it feels odd to say, oh, like they went sub 6 for the first time, and I think they could have gone faster if Henvo's start hadn't been flubbed, but I do feel that way. So, you know, Cal in general and on that relay has some groundwork to make up in terms of who's coming back to their team for next season. But, you know, to think about like that's a record that we're going to get to see get chased by some incredible teams to come is really exciting to think about.
Man, I think that's like kind of the next topic I want to discuss about this meet is just the impact of the transfers, of the transfer portal, of the transfer classes, of these senior/fifth year classes, because I don't know about Texas. They've got a monster sophomore class, and I think they'll be good. But I know someone told me Cal has these. They were 19 points behind Texas. They got second, and they are 7th in returning points right now. So there is so much talent leaving the NCAA right now. If you look at just the top 3 teams, Hobson, Carosa, Matt King, the Casper Corbo, Lucas Henvo, Gabe Jett, Jack Alexi, like, you know, over half of those guys are Olympians, NCAA champions, just so much from that top end. So first of all, how do you think, how big of an impact do you think just the transfer portal made in this year's NCAA team race? Brendan, I'll throw this one to you first.
I think it did make a noticeable impact on the team race, but also I think that the teams competing, it all kind of canceled each other out, where Texas, Cal, and Indiana, they all masterfully used the transfer portal to pick up some really big impact athletes on their roster. But I think it was just kind of a war of attrition at the end, where they were all scoring big points from transfers. So I think it did have an impact, but it wasn't one team having a clear cut advantage over the other. Maybe Giuliano was probably the best. If there's someone else I'm missing, please feel free to correct me, but his relay impact for Texas was absolutely massive, and he scored a bunch of points individually. Mm-hmm. So props to them.
Sophie, thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to think about like not only the transfer portal, right? We saw Texas and Indiana both really effectively use the transfer portal in the offseason. People were already talking about it at Olympic trials, but we saw all 3 of these top teams make midseason additions that ended up having a huge impact for them. I agree that Giuliano probably is the biggest difference maker when you look at the impact, but you know, both Henvo and Mew and Tomac were huge for Cal. Casper Corbo, you know, really helped shore up Indiana's breaststroke. Not that it necessarily needed it, but you know, he scored points for them, and you can't discount that. It's interesting to think about how that's going to play out going forward. You know, presumably with the House versus NCAA settlement, if it gets approved, schools will still be able to make those types of additions, but because if the settlement gets approved, it'll be roster limits in favor of, instead of scholarship caps. They're going to have budgeted roster space to make those midseason moves. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, and whether the offseason transfer portal just gets that much more intense if the midseason thing becomes less frequent, as teams don't want to take that risk on who they might or might not be able to find some eligibility for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people have been like, oh, Chris Giuliano, difference maker. And he certainly was. Like, I don't think there's an argument to be had that he wasn't a significant difference maker. But as you guys mentioned, all three of those top teams had big transfers and big midseason additions that put them in the position that they ended up being at the conclusion of the meet. I think if Giuliano goes to Cal or Indiana, which he was rumored to be going to both, I think at some point, I think they win. So it is really interesting that he ended up at Texas, because I think he could have helped bring a team title to any of those three. He scored 44 and a half individual points, I think, plus his relay value. It's like, yeah, he was a huge difference maker, but again, so was Hinvo and Maywin Tomac. So were Casper and Brian Benzing and Matt King to Indiana. So I don't think we'll see as much of this moving forward because of the grad transfer COVID fifth year not being as much of a thing anymore, most likely. We've seen grad transfers happen in the past. I know that weren't because of a COVID fifth year. I know Felicia Pasadine finished at Harvard in 3 years, went to Ohio State for 1 year. So there's cases like that, but for the most part, I think this was a very unique year. I'm really happy it played out the way that it did. And we got, again, a fairly close team battle. I think it ended up being Cal was 19 points behind Texas and Indiana was 12 points behind Cal. So it's like it really could have shaken out with any of those teams on top, if a few things had gone different. Carson Tyler missed the A final in the 1 meter diving. Bjorn Seeliger had to swim off for 16th and then swam a time that would have made the A final in the 100 back. It's like there's a lot of little things that could have changed the needle for all of these teams. But I feel like Brendan said it very well. I think the transfers kind of canceled each other out in the end in terms of the team standing in team battle. But be very interesting to see moving forward what the NCAA landscape looks like with probably less of these, again, grad transfers or just I wonder if there will be mid-season additions moving forward, especially for Cal, which we've come to kind of expect that from them.
Yeah.
Any other additional thoughts on this topic?
One more swim, and I think it translates well to long course. Luke Hobson, Mr. Tuner Freestyle, 128.3. He's on a tear right now.
Dude, yeah. His last 200-yard freestyle as a Longhorn, that guy just knows how to do that event. What the heck? I mean, I certainly didn't expect a time like that.
Yeah, short course world record holder, NCAA record holder, 1 stroke away at the Olympics from winning Olympic gold medal in 200 free. He's one to watch out for this entire quad, really.
And I'm glad you brought that up. We're going to get to some long course swimming for you international fans out there, for you fans of long course out there. Yards is officially over for the spring and for the summer. So we're going to be talking about a lot more long course, and we will finish up with that at the end of this show. We have a couple more topics. Sticking with the NCAA, Sophie, you just broke this news. U.S. Olympian Bella Sims accepted a no fault or negligence finding for the from the International Testing Agency, or ITA, after testing positive for the banned substance hydrochlorothiazide, or HCTZ, last fall. The agency reported on Monday, March 31st. Sophie, can you tell us a little bit more about this? This was certainly shocking news to me, to us, I think to everyone in the swimming community this morning. Can you fill us in?
Yeah, so the ITA press release about the investigation that just finished up kind of takes you through the general timeline of what this investigation looked like. So basically, Sims tested positive for this substance on September 29th, not during a competition, which means it was just a doping control test that they showed up, presumably at her house. And she tested positive for HCTZ, which is a diuretic. It's banned by WADA. The investigation found that the positive test came as a result of contaminated medicine, which Sims declared on the doping control form that you get when the agents show up at your house. In her Instagram post commenting on the investigation, she said that the medication was for a torn labrum in her hip, which she had been taking since that injury. And so the investigation found that she was at no fault or negligence for the controlled substance, which means that she couldn't have known or suspected, nor was there like a reasonable assumption for her to suspect that this medication would be contaminated with the banned substance. That finding means that there are no sanctions for her, so she has no period of ineligibility. And since the test didn't come at a competition, none of her results are going to be disqualified.
Mhm.
I think for fans, the biggest thing here is like, oh, she was just competing at the NCAAs. I just saw her. And I think one thing that's important to make a distinction about is that the NCAA isn't a signatory on the WADA, which means that she was allowed to compete in NCAA competitions. So that's why we saw her throughout the NCAA season, but not at Short Course Worlds, for example, because the investigation was still ongoing.
Yeah. So big news. My gut reaction to this is that I am glad that that ultimately she can keep competing. But it just makes me sad that she had to go through her entire college season with this stressor on her. I mean, she swam well at SECs. She swam well at NCAAs, not an incredible meet. I'm sure not the meet that she had wanted for herself, but it's not like she was terrible. She got second place in both backstrokes, and was a significant scorer for Florida. But to go through an entire season with a stressor like this, and if she is to be believed, I know people have lots of thoughts on whether if you test positive, you're just guilty no matter what. That's not my feeling at all. It's like it really makes me feel for an athlete who is just trying to do their best, is trying to go through their process, and then take a contaminated, take something that they're trying to better their body with, and then it ends up being contaminated, and then they have to go through this whole process. I really feel for her. I hope she can move forward from this in a positive way, but I think now she probably get a little more crap from the outside because people won't believe that this was just an accident or contaminated. And I think that is a real bummer. Sophie, I'm curious, again, you broke this story, you reported on it. I'm curious your gut reaction or just thoughts on the matter after having really dissected it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. We've been talking all season about her bounce back from what was a disappointing Olympic trials and how it seemed like that was really going well. So, it's just another layer to learn that she had this significant stressor on her throughout this whole season, no matter what the outcome was going to be. So now, we've been asking since the summer, how is Bella Sims going to move forward? And now we're just re-asking that question, right? Like we thought we had the information and some answers on that, but it just kind of feels like this hits the reset button on that. Now there's 3 months, 2 months, I can't do the math, until US Nationals, which is the trials for
2 months.
2 months for a world championship. So you hope that, the investigation is over, unless the USADA appeals. which they are within their rights to do to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But the ITA and World Aquatics seem to believe that this investigation is over and they're done with the matter. So hopefully she will be too, and she'll be able to move forward.
And then Brendan, I'm just curious on once again your gut reaction just as an athlete and being a former elite athlete.
Right. I mean, both of you, specifically Sophie, you did a fantastic job breaking the story. You're much more versed in this world than I am, but I just feel bad for Bella. As you mentioned, Coleman, just having this stressor on your season. I can't imagine just the ins and outs, the daily kind of inner turmoil that may or may not have plagued Bella this season. She did show up in a great way at SECs, and then NCAAs didn't have the meet that she wanted, but she definitely was a huge contributor, like you said. So I just hope that this gets all sorted out, and I hope that she can bounce back because she is a fantastically talented athlete, and she seems like a great presence on the U.S. national team.
Agreed. And I'm glad you mentioned that too. You know, it's not always just about what you are doing in the pool. Bella is, if you've had a conversation with Bella, she's a ray of sunshine. She's laughing a lot on deck. She's smiling a lot. Like I'm guessing she is a positive contributor to whatever team she is on. So once again, I hope she can move forward from this because even if you're found not guilty or non-negligent, this is something that in sport can stick with you for a while. So hopefully she can move past that, but we will see how this story progresses forward. Staying with long course swimming, swim meets are not over. Sacramento Pro Swim is coming up in 2 days. Starts Wednesday night. Keeping it on the West Coast for these major meets. I am just curious as to your thoughts on who you're excited to see swim here. We have a big Australian contingent. I believe this Australian team went to the Westmont Pro Swim, and then they did an altitude training camp in Flagstaff, Arizona, and then they are competing at the Sacramento Pro Swim as well. We also have a team of French swimmers competing, among them Beryl Gastadello, Maxime Grousset. We don't have as big of a domestic presence as we did in Westmont, which I think is pretty interesting. Westmont, right outside of Chicago, very central, pretty easy for everyone to get to. Sacramento, certainly not as central, certainly not as easy for everyone to get to, but kind of bare bones in terms of domestic American swimming here, in terms of Olympians and national teamers, which I'm a little surprised at. But Sophie, I'll toss this one to you first. Just who do you think? Who are you excited to see swim and get in some long course reps in the Sacramento Pro Swim?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what Maxime Grousset can do. Regardless of how deep the national contingent is here, the international group of swimmers continues to be a really nice change of pace at these Pro Swim series. You know, we don't often get to see a ton of international swimmers show up at these. You know, Grousset is another swimmer who didn't necessarily have the games that he wanted at home. Although, you know, ending on that bronze medal in the 400 medley was a nice note to sign off on. So I'm really interested to see how he responds from that. He's been racing consistently since the games, but you know, he's coming in, he's entered in 4 events, 50 fly, 100 fly, 50 free, 100 free, pretty standard for him. I'm interested to see if he's going to lean more towards freestyle or butterfly sprinting this season. You know, he's the 2023 100 fly world champ, but he's gifted across the board in all 4 of these events he's entered in. So I'm excited to see where he's going to be in April.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brendan, same for you. Who are you excited to see in action here?
As you mentioned, the Australian contingent of swimmers looks like they went to the Westmont Pro Swim that did an altitude camp. Sam Short specifically had a great Westmont Pro Swim, breaking the 800 meet record. I'm just curious to see what he can do coming off of an altitude camp. I think he could really pop some incredible times at this meet, as well as the rest of the Australian contingent. And I'm always looking for Michael Andrew. You know, he's someone that I don't think he had the best Westmont Pro Swim, but it's a different month. It's a different meet. So I'm always looking to see how he bounces back from this, not quite the summer he wanted last summer.
Absolutely. Especially now that they've re-added 50s of stroke back into the pro swims. Big fan of that. Love seeing, especially I'm guessing this was strategic. It is a world champ year. World championships have those 50s of stroke. I assume world trials will have the 50s of stroke as well. So I'm glad that we get a few racing opportunities for those, again, internationally and domestically. In terms of domestic swimmers actually signed up to swim at this meet, I am excited to see. I thought there would be a little more holdover from the NCAA with these college swimmers already tapering, already preparing to swim as fast as they can. I would have thought a few more of them would have stayed out on the West Coast and just gotten those long course reps in. So not many college swimmers, but we will see a few. The aforementioned Luca Urlando. This is his essentially a home meet for him. He is from the Sacramento area. He's signed up in that 200, specifically in that 200 fly. So very excited to see what he can do in long course after making an Olympic team, after having the best short course season certainly he's ever had in his career. And then a couple other college swimmers who are signed up. Leah Shackley from NC State. A little surprised she's making the trip, but I think a few other of her teammates are as well. But she had a great freshman year with the Wolfpack, so excited to see what she can do in long course. And then another freshman, this one from Cal, Marie-Ambre Molu from France. Again, she had great success with the Bears this year, so excited to see if she can put up some competitive times in long course as well. But yeah, Sacramento should be a fun meet. I won't be there. I'm guessing you guys won't be there, but we can watch from afar, and we'll see how these swimmers get in some long course racing.
Yeah.
All right,
at 8 p.m., not 9 p.m. Eastern time. Much more civilized.
Dude, it is wild being on the West Coast. I'm curious in your thoughts on this too, Brendan. But just covering a meet that, as you said, Sophie, starts at 9 p.m. Eastern. I would be posting things at 9 or 10 p.m. in Federal Way, and it's like, oh my God, it's already the next day on the East Coast. This is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking with a couple of people, including yourself, Coleman. It was a very interesting having a West Coast Championships. They haven't been out there since 2012. I'm curious, as we try and garner more attention for the sport, if this was maybe the last of its kind in terms of West Coast Championships. I kind of hope it's not, because the facility was amazing. It's definitely a pool designed to host big meets, and I think overall fans, athletes, coaches had some good things to say about being out there on the West Coast. Washington's a beautiful state, but in terms of comparing this experience to last year in Indianapolis, it kind of felt like more people were in tune with Indianapolis because it is on the East Coast. And even when it's at a Minnesota or an Austin or a Georgia Tech in Atlanta, it's definitely, I think, kind of different experiences having a West Coast Championships versus an East Coast one.
Yeah, I know from an analytics standpoint, viewership goes down when it is on the West Coast, just because on the East Coast it's 9 p.m. But if you start at 6 p.m. on the East Coast, it's 3 p.m. on the West Coast, and it's really easy for them to tune in as well. And so I am curious to see moving forward if we will have NCAAs on the West Coast again in the future, let alone the near future. I know the next 3 years it is currently scheduled to be both men's and women's, Georgia Tech and Atlanta next year, and then UT Austin for the next 2 years, 27 and 28. But we'll see after that, and we'll see if things change before then. I think there may be some sweeping changes to college swimming in the next few years, with the House settlement, with ADs really reevaluating the value college swimming brings to an athletic program and to a university. But hey, we'll see. We don't have to get too deep today. All right, let's finish up this breakdown with a few sink or swims, just to wrap up the 2025 NCAA season. First up today on Sink or Swim, we saw one Caeleb Dressel record finally get broken. Jordan Crooks dropped a 39.8 to break Caeleb Dressel's 39.90 100 free NCAA record. Sink or swim, Caeleb Dressel will have no NCAA records in 1 year from today at the conclusion of next year's NCAA championships. Sophie?
Sink, he will have records still standing. Just want to make sure I'm understanding the phrasing correctly.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yes. Yeah, he will. I think you can make an interesting argument for the 100 butterfly and how Thomas Heilman might push Josh Liendo. You know, Liendo has been inching closer, and we saw him take another 100th off. But, you know, less than a week removed from watching Jordan Crooks, it really seems like that 50 free record is here to stay for a bit. You know, Crooks has gone sub 18 the most times of anybody by a considerable margin, but you continually see how hard those last 0.2 are to find. So I personally would be very surprised if this time next year, all of Caeleb Dressel's individual records were wiped off the board.
Brandon?
I'm going to agree. I'm going to sink. I think the 50 free is going to be here to stay. I do think Liendo will get his 100 fly record next year. I think he'll finally take it down in Atlanta. But I mean, the 50 free, Crooks is, I mean, arguably better at the 50 free short course than Dressel was, just in terms of consistency, getting under 18. Dressel obviously has the top 2 times ever, so there's that argument to be made. But Crooks has been the 50 free guy for a couple of years, and if he wasn't able to get it, then I'm not sure who's going to get it next year.
I'm inclined to agree with Brendan, but for the sake of argument, I'm going to swim this. I think Josh Liendo is going to be hungry. I think, you know, this year more than ever, we thought Liendo's going to get one of those Dressel records, and he didn't. But he was very close and certainly in the 100 free, in the 100 fly, he was a little further away. The 50 free, he was a little further away than that. But I think next year, Liendo, especially without Crooks, will be undoubtedly the guy in his events. Like, he's going to have open water, especially with all the graduations in the 100 freestyle. He's going to have so much open water next year at NCAA's in my head. And so I think in the 50, that's kind of a key thing. And again, without Crooks, I think he's going to cruise, and I think he'll have a shot. He'll have, again, 2 50s potentially individually and leading off the relay on that first night of finals. And I'm just going to, I'm going to swim it. I'm going to say Liendo gets it done and breaks all 3 of Caeleb Dressel's remaining Florida records. I guess he still has a 200 IM Florida school record. You know what I'm saying? I think he's going to go faster than Caeleb Dressel went in all 3 of his main events at those 2018 NCAAs. So come on, Josh. Don't let me down. All right. Next up. This one's pretty simple. We saw Bob Bowman coach the Texas Longhorns to an NCAA team title in his first year in Austin. Sink or swim, the Texas men have just kicked off a men's swimming dynasty. Brendan?
I'm going to swim it, unfortunately. They kind of kicked everyone's butts this year in a, quote, rebuilding year, coming off a 7th place showing last year. Yeah. And they don't really graduate a lot. They're going to be pretty much intact for next year. They have some great recruiting classes coming in. More importantly, they have unlimited money at the University of Texas to purchase whatever summer they see fit, whatever recruit they see fit. And yeah, I think if you're a fan of non-parity and one-team domination, you should tune into the University of Texas men's swimming for the next couple of years.
It's sad, but it's true. Sophie?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's an interesting conversation about the definition of what a dynasty looks like, but, you know, it certainly seems like they are in great shape to really kick one off. You know, they returned the most individual points of any team for next year, not factoring in any potential 5th years or remaining years of eligibility that people may or may not have left. For them, that includes David Johnston, but they're still in a really great position, especially when you consider that, like Coleman mentioned earlier, Cal, who is arguably their main rival, returns 43 points. So, you know, they're in a great spot. Ooh. And like Brendan said, they're one of the richest athletic departments in the country that's made, like a real investment in this swim team and its success. And in a post-House versus NCAA world, that is going to count for a lot as athletic departments kind of think about what swimming programs bring to the school and the value that they can hold. If you've got a school that's already kind of affirmed its commitment by adding 200 scholarships across all sports, which they did months ago, that's a pretty strong selling point. Plus the recruiting that they have already done.
43 points. That's really what Cal's returning?
Yes.
Oh my God. That's so sad for them. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I have to swim this. I think it'll be really interesting to see how Cal reacts next year. Again, this was Dave Durden's 16th year in a row, top two in the top two in NCAA, something like that. I think Cal has finished in the top two since 2010. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, to have them return 43 points will be really interesting to see what they do. But as I mentioned at the top of the hour, Texas's sophomore class just looks stellar. You've got Hubie Koch, Nate German-Prey, Will Modulin, highlighting that class, but and they are all 3-event scorers, right? So it's not like they're pulling their weight. That's like 150 points easy right there. So yeah, I can't deny it. It doesn't look bright for the future of parity in college swimming, at least in these next few seasons. But whatever Bob Bowman is doing is working. Certainly whatever the University of Texas is doing seems like it will work moving forward. So Texas dynasty, horns up, here we come. All right. And then just to get into long course, last up on Sink or Swim, half of the men's NCAA individual champions who plan to keep swimming will win medals this summer at the Singapore World Championships. We've got 7 of those. That is Jordan Crooks, Josh Liendo, Hubie Koch, Luca Urlando, Zalan Sarkany, Luke Hobson, and Rex Maurer. So of those 7, 4 of them will win medals at this summer's World Championships. That can be individual, that can be relay. Sink or swim? Sophie, what do you think?
Sink. I get to 3 easily. It's the 4th one that I'm having trouble with coming up with. For my 3 are Hobson, Liendo, and Koch. I think are pretty easy or safe bets to at least win 1 medal. It's the other ones who there are questions about. With Maurer, you got to make the team first, which he has yet to make a senior international team for the U.S. That might change, but Urlando, to this point, we haven't seen him perform well in the 200 fly at international competitions. So it would take a big leap for him to get onto the podium. For Sarkany, men's distance is crazy right now. Even if you think about who might not be there. So it's that 4th one that I have trouble with. So I'll sink it.
Brendan?
I'm going to swim it. I agree that Liendo, Koch, and Maurer are pretty safe picks to at least get a medal, if not win a gold medal this summer. I think Crooks, he'll find a way to get at least a medal in a 50 free or maybe even a 50 fly.
I'm going to swim it as well. I'm just going to stay optimistic. I think, as you said, Sophie, Hobson, Liendo, Koch, easy medal picks. They've proven they can get the job done long course. I think one of those guys will have a breakout long course season this summer. We've seen Jordan Crooks kind of steadily rise through those ranks. And Luca Urlando, again, making the Olympics, having a great season. Like maybe I think one of those guys can get 1 medal. I have faith. So I'm going to swim it and say 4 as well. But we shall see. And that is all on today's episode of the SwimSwam Breakdown. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.